I have been requested to present on water use efficiency in irrigation, and what I will do here, I'm not focusing on the aggregate efficiency groundwater. I'm talking about only surface irrigation systems, large surface irrigation systems, examples and lessons from there. And if I refer to water productivity and these debates which are now there up in discussions, are only by implications. I'm referring only to water use efficiency in the classic sense, which means the water which is evaporated transpired by the crop. Now this picture shows, the schematic shows the flow of water. These figures in parentheses are percentages, and though the data comes from a sub-basin near RLC, the world famous crisis of water, the numbers are more or less very typical of most irrigation systems. That whatever you divert from the resource, roughly 1/3 ends up growing crops actually. The rest is lost somewhere. Part of it can be renewed, part of it can be captured for another use or mixed with fresh water and used again for growing crops, but not of course in the same quantity, same quality, so it has not returned as it was in the surface irrigation system. Now again, because when we talk about field level water use efficiency to the root zone, etc., that narrows down discussion, but actually and there you might end up having larger efficiencies. The number of the cubic meters of water you have diverted to the field might be less compared to the number of cubic meters to deliver that water which are required at the source. So this flow very well shows that it's 1/3 or so which is actually used by crops. If you will ask an irrigation engineer in Spain or Italy or in Australia or California as a farmer that I want to use water efficiently, he might design something like this for you, a drip irrigation system, nice orchard there, pressurized system, and in a couple of years in reality it might look like this. The idea is to waste much less water, to try to consume every drop you have. And this is exactly what will happen in the backyard garden near the RLC, but simply they don't have means to do the rest. So they just puncture the plastic bottle, put them as pitchers in soil near plants and grow crops. So what drives water use inefficiency? Multiple causes, from agronomic, biological to social and economic and environmental. So I try to group them in 3 areas. One is related to technology, technological varieties, field level techniques, drips and all kinds of systems, system automation itself, rehabilitation. The other one, as we talked in the morning, allocative efficiency, etc., pricing the resource right and using it as a mechanism to achieve efficiency. And the third, management or governance reform in irrigation, which I put a slash in between management and governance, but because my colleagues in water research are usually confused between management and governance, they tend to substitute these 2 words for same thing. So if you look at the technological aspects, and I'm here talking only about the field level technologies, the technologies which deliver you higher conservation or more efficient water use, they have lower financial feasibility for farmers. These low energy pressurized applications, sprinklers, laser leveling and stuff like that. Whereas the low tech like mulching, zero till or medium till, these things do not give much of water conservation, but they do not cost much either. So farmers then end up generally choosing low tech, low conservation strategy even in areas where they have extreme water scarcity. they would tend to rely more on groundwater instead. Part of the problem is that most of these technologies are suitable for specific weather conditions, for specific field conditions, for specific crops. A farmer combining vegetables with wheat, in one season wheat, in other, he has to switch between technologies. He can't afford that. So that's why there are a number of challenges we face. One is the challenge of adoption. Generally, the literature, many of our colleagues would tend to blame farmer for their ignorance, irrationality, and lack of knowledge or respect for environment, but that's not the case. Even during the severe droughts, research tells us that even during the severe droughts, farmers with more resources would try to adopt conservation technologies. As water becomes scarcer and more unreliable, which it is in India and Pakistan, for example, farmers tend to rely more on groundwater, just to bridge the gap of unreliability. They know it's expensive, they use a lot of energy, they know it will be saline, but still they will mix it with irrigation because it's more reliable. So, key challenge is also reliability. When in an irrigation system water is unreliable, farmer will not tend to, because he assumes that next meal I will not get, so he will tend to overeat anyway. So reliability is a key for water delivery. I will not be as skeptical as one of IMI's ex-Director General was, who said that because many papers, research pieces written on water conservation, they adopt a terminology to which he doesn't agree on water use efficiency, and therefore he says the field level technologies, technical interventions have not always led to the expected desirable outcomes in water conservation, and the recommendations from this kind of research is often dubious and at worst completely wrong. I would argue for appropriateness of technologies, and by appropriateness I would mean that we need to adopt a transdisciplinary approach to devising innovations, going to the intended user, the targeted user, and discovering the innovation technology, adopting it according to the local conditions within his or her settings. This is a massive effort, I know, but this is unfortunately perhaps the only avenue. We discovered a lot, we shelved a lot, we achieved not much. So if we want to achieve something in the field and get real conservation, we have to go this way. Otherwise, we will keep on shelving papers and which will be referred only by our peers. Water pricing, all the literature I came across apart from the World Bank, which also agrees that water pricing methods are more creating impacts on crop choice and cropping patterns rather than conserving water as such, even where these are implemented in irrigation. But they are the best proponents so far. Others, all kinds of research indicates that, for example, Perry indicates that pricing irrigation water can only happen when it directly relates to the level of consumption and when it can be measured. The conditions do not exist in many irrigation systems. Water markets work best in situations of water scarcity, where agriculture and water rights are well developed. Price that farmers pay for water in many world areas is much less than the value, but the application of right pricing might be impossible in poor countries. So all kinds of studies on water pricing suggest, which have checked it, that they do not pass the field check. So how practical water prices are to implement, regardless of what mechanism you go about, is a serious debate, I think, and it's the right time to have it finished somewhere. Irrigation reforms, and I use this, what I call Pentagon model. Reforms are statement of intent, which the governments, it applies to policies also. Governments write their intent in paper, then they translate these intentions into instruments, implement them with combination of institutions, agencies, organizations. These lead to impacts. So this kind of analysis helps us to trace the reform until it impacts very seriously. What happens in most irrigation reform cases, that intentions are of two types, and it is not specific to water reforms only, it's also specific to many other reforms and policies. Governments in developing countries tend to speak the language dictated by donors. So the intentions, overt intentions, would be very clear, close to what is environmentally, socially, and economically tenable and viable and desirable, but covert intentions are often different. And that is where it comes visible once you look at the instruments of reforms. For example, in many countries, the irrigation reforms are implemented through the agricultural and water and drainage loans. The intent of the government at that stage is to grab this money as soon as possible and settle its part of balance of payments. So they are very quick to agree, they are quick to sign the documents and agree on principles, and as soon as things go in implementation, things start going wrong. That is why in most cases, and International Water Management Institute has recently done a study on examining 108 cases of reforms across the globe, and they inform that the outcomes at best can be described as mixed. Some successes, most failures, and a lot of pending issues. And I try to draw a cross-section of these reforms from these 5 countries in Central, West, and South Asia. And I find that the translation of intention into instrument is the weakest point. And that is why in many countries the impacts have been negligible, weak, only one exception of Turkey. Now to sum up, the conveyance losses 45% of the losses of water. The general attitude or the redressal has been through huge infrastructure programs, which of course focus a lot on cement and mortar measures, lining canals, huge pumps, conveyance infrastructure, but much less on the soft side, improving the management skills, delivering right kind of management systems, databases, performance evaluations, transparency, accountability. It's usually 1%, 2% of the complete loan. And there are millions of examples, I think, of all the development lending which can show it. And even under institutional development, whatever is put, half of it and more than half of it is meant as raising new building, equipping it, transport for the irrigation agency, stuff like that. So it doesn't go as soft either. Part of it is again hard. It's not that I argue the water users are not interested in conserving water. They are, but under their conditions. We need to understand them better. We need to understand their context, why they are, and their rationality, why they are doing so. And that will help us in designing and implementing right or appropriate innovations. Water pricing, to my view, is kind of an area where I don't attach a big hope that it will help in conserving water. We have focused too much in reforms on reforming the lower tier, and practically what it has implied is dumping governmental fiscal budget on poor farmers, giving them the lowest tiers, intervening too much, giving them designs how the organization should be, and then backing away from it. They are not responsible for the mistakes of poor design or implementation at the earlier stage. So reforms actually have to be re-evaluated. And here I see the role of experimental economics in designing and testing smart incentives. Some colleagues in, for example, Gießen are looking at how can groundwater be regulated, managed better through incentives designed together with water use associations, etc., etc. And I'm sure something will come out of it. So we need to also see how can bureaucracies, water bureaucracies, be reformed. What they are become more transparent, more ready to anyway accept suggestions from lower tiers, and giving them some seats on their decision mechanisms. That has not happened. In all countries, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the ideas of water boards, the ideas of water councils joined by farmers have really been frustrated. Ministers chair, the law says the chair of water board, the irrigation agency, would be a farmer. And then the minister is appointed because he is a farmer, without regarding that he is a huge, big farmer with a lot of power, and he does not represent ordinary farmers, etc., etc. So these things need to be redressed, I think. So also, instead of just dumping the burden on farmers, we need to give them voice and authority in decision making, right from lower tiers to up to the bigger tiers. And there are serious concerns about transparency, how irrigation agencies operate, how these reforms are even conceived. If you consultants run from World Bank's office from around the globe with different experiences to a country for 15 days and decide the face of the irrigation system and deliver $750 million for a 10 years loan, and at the end it doesn't work, or it creates new problems, redress some of the old problems but creates new ones. So these kind of tendencies we need to avoid, I think. And thank you very much. I think I said enough.